Amen. So, very good evening to you all. So, my name is Jurgen, and I know many of you will try to pronounce my name. Well, if you're not from the Netherlands or Northern Ireland, it's a bit tricky to do the rg. Anyway, so I am married with Katja. You can see my wife there with the nice sunglasses, and we've got 5 children. The oldest lady is all the way in the top. That's Vanya. It's a Russian name, and she is doing all her exams this year in the Netherlands. On her right, you see Issa. Issa is a Swahili name, which means God saves, and you might know it from Isa. That's the name of Jesus in the Quran, and in Japanese it means pure and something else. Oh, it's a good name. Then below him you see Abby. That's my second daughter. Abby is 15. Then we'll go to the left, right? That's Simeon. Simeon is 8. And above Simeon you see Dani, who is 13 now. So I've got 3 teenagers in the group, which is a lot of fun. Because I have been a teenager for many years, so I really enjoy having teenagers around. So we are in the Netherlands right now to have a little bit of an extended furlough. Normally we work on Madagascar, and I will, in just a short moment, I will show you where Madagascar is. We have been there for 8 years already, but I think it's nice for you to hear a little bit about our story up to, or how do you say that, towards the mission field. My wife and I got married in 1997. So this year that will be 27 years already. And one thing, because I just a few years before that I became a Christian. I have not been raised as a Christian. And when I was a Christian, I actually thought, well, this is it. I will not able to find a nice Christian girl. And then I saw my wife, which was really cool. And we became friends, and actually we were quite serious about serving the Lord. And even before we were going steady, we already knew from each other that we wanted to serve the Lord full time. So 1997 we got married. And things started to move. My wife became a lawyer. She had her own practice. In 2004, my first daughter was born, and I decided to stop. Well, we decided that I should stop working in the bakery. I used to be a bread baker, and I took care of my little daughter for 7 years, and later the second one came as well, and the third one as well, of course. And in that whole period, we actually never really discussed mission. You see, before we even got children, we did some things together. We have been to China, smuggling Bibles with open doors, which was really cool to do. But after that, we got settled. We had a nice house. We had 2 cars. I had it made. I mean, I didn't have to. Well, I did have to work a bit hard because I had to wake up in the night to take care of the children. But that was about it. So we went to a birthday party, and somewhere I heard my wife telling somebody else. Well, she said, I would like to go into mission, but I'm not so sure about Jurgen. So on our way home, I said, what did you mean by that? I'm not so sure about Jurgen, because we always wanted to serve the Lord full time. And she said, well, if you look at your life now, you've got it made. You've got a nice house, 2 cars. We had a beautiful dog, a big Rottweiler. It's a scary dog, teeth like this. I love it. And so from that moment on, we started to think about it again, and we started to pray about it. And actually, in that period, we also decided, like, okay, if we want to go to the mission field, we might want to do something about our theological knowledge. So we started to look around, and we also have been here in Cornerstone to see, is this something for us to do? Is this something we want to do, I need to say. It turned out not really our thing to study here. And in the end, we moved to England, and I did a theology study there. Yeah, I need to say study. And later on, I finished that online. And in that period in England, we also looked at a mission organization because we didn't want to go just like, okay, well, let's see where we end up. So we looked at New Tribes missions. Does somebody have a glass of water for me, maybe? Yeah. And so we looked at New Tribes missions. We looked at OM. I think we have been in conversation with WEC. And in the end, we came up with AIM, Africa Inland Mission. And Africa Inland Mission is an organization which is mostly orientated on the unreached people. And they apparently, we didn't know that, but they were sending people out to places in the middle of nowhere, scary places with no drinking water and stuff like that. And my wife and I were going like, oh yeah, that's fun. So we started to talk about mission with Africa Inland Mission. And I think somewhere in 2013 or 14, we became members of Africa Inland Mission. I still have something in my throat. And it's not because I'm nervous, but I've been eating the candy. And this is my punishment. I wait for my... It's your fault. She said I could eat whatever I wanted and how much I wanted. You see? And now my wife would tell me, okay, I'm not going to tell you what my wife would tell me. But anyway, so in 2015, we decided to move to Madagascar. And we didn't have a project yet. We didn't know exactly what to do. But the leader of AIM in Madagascar, he saw our profile document in which I actually said like, oh, just send me to somewhere in the middle of nowhere. I don't mind. I love it. And he said, oh, I want these guys on Madagascar. One funny thing was in the profile document, there was also a question, what is your work? And at that time, my wife and I actually swapped places because I studied theology and she took care of the children. So she wrote down, my work is changing nappies and singing lullabies. So the guy on Madagascar said, oh, I love to have these people on Madagascar because somebody who sees changing diapers and singing lullabies as a job, that's somebody we need on Madagascar. So we ended up on Madagascar. Anyway, who of you didn't know that Madagascar is over there? Did you all know that? Or do you only know the Madagascar from the movie? Because there are no giraffes on Madagascar. There are fusas and monkeys. So Madagascar is over there. From our not my birth town, but where we lived, it's Den Helder. It's about 8,900 kilometers. It's quite a far stretch to go there. And we came to Madagascar. We didn't really know what to do. And in the first year, we spent a lot of time doing surveys, looking around, see whether there are people groups we want to live and where we wanted to go. And after 1 year, we decided we wanted to work among the Antanala people. Antanala means people of the forest. Is there somebody here maybe who speaks a little bit of Malagasy? I only know there are people from Ethiopia. She's not here? No? Friends I've seen Northern Ireland, I've seen Canada, right? Canadians. Other groups? Do I miss somebody? Spain? Sorry? Oh, Aussie. Did you say that? Oh, Australia, down under. Radio. We've got some friends on Madagascar who come from Australia. Anyway, so Yeah, we decided to go to a small village called Maruambaka. And the reason I wanted to ask you, I asked you about Malagasy is that I already knew by just looking at you guys, you probably don't understand Malagasy. Malagasy is the official language on Madagascar. And the fun part is that in the first year, we kind of learned how to speak the official kind of. It's more like, hey, how are you doing? Can I buy those carrots from you? Oh, that's way too expensive. I mean, I'm from the Netherlands, so to say, oh, that's way too expensive, that is something the Dutch people will learn right away. Anyway, so then we moved to a village called Maruambaka, and this is the village. And if you see about the left top building, that's our house actually. That's the biggest house in the whole village. And you see our car down there. That's a big Nissan Patrol. It took me a long time to find that one because on Madagascar you want a car that is old-fashioned. So if it breaks down, you only want to use a hammer and slam the thing, and then it should be okay again. Because on Madagascar it's pretty much in the middle of nowhere where you're going. So it's a big Nissan Patrol, and it brought us to the village if there was no rain. Because if the rain started to fall, I wasn't really able to come to the village with my 5 children by then, of which the youngest was only 1 year by that time. So you want to have some security. Anyway, this is our village. This is the what we call Maruambaka Ambani, which means Maruambaka downstairs. And then you don't see that, but then you've got a Maruambaka Ambuni, which means Maruambaka upstairs. I will turn on the volume a little bit because the next one is, who of you knows MAV, the people who fly the planes? Yeah, we've got some awesome friends, and sometimes when they go somewhere on Madagascar, they go like, oh, let's have some fun and fly over this nice village of Jurgen and Katja. And they did. And it's So, how about that for a nice view? Now it stops, and you see on the left side, you see Maruambaka Ambuni, so Maruambaka upstairs, and you see here, almost in the middle, our place of Maruambaka, and then you see the long stretch building. It's actually a church building, and I used to call it my office, because I quite often went there to sit and work, because it was, you can't really see it, but it's on top of a hill, so the wind goes through. The windows were already out, so that was a nice place to sit. Now, I already told you, probably, yeah, I did, about the languages. Because when we came to this area, my wife and I went to different villages in the area to introduce ourselves, which is a lot of fun because people want you to be relaxed, they welcome you and they give you food, and you want to be very polite, so you're going to eat the food, and it's a lot of fun, I guarantee you that. And then you need to do a kabari, and a kabari is what we call a little speech. Something like, oh, I'm so happy to be here, thank you, you're so nice to me, and something like that. So my wife, I did a little kabari, and my wife was going like, oh, but I can do this, because she's much better in languages than I am. So she started to do a little kabari in the Malagasy language, and people were going, And then she said, and she was finished, and and the people were going, oh, thank you, very nice. Well, months later, I came back, and they said, oh yeah, we remember your wife. She was doing kabari, and she was talking a lot, and she sounded like Malagasy, but it was no Malagasy. turned out, and that was the moment that I found out, that the people there didn't understand a word of the official language. They speak, most of them, they speak in a dialect. And just to make it a little bit more clear for you, for example, if I say scared, in the official language they say matawatra. But in our area they say mangwang. But if you go a little bit further into the area, it's mafuzu. And that's for one language. Then, for example, if I would ask, are there any more of those sweets you gave to me, because you put them away. Where did you put them? I go like bulamisi, and that's like, is there still some? But in the dialect, they would answer not with chimisi, because there is none. They would something say like shimishi, and you need to do something with your tongue, which is really, really hard to start using it. It's like sh and nga. So try that for a while, and a lot of the language they're doing is like that. So, for example, I went to a village called Chi Umbi Vuetra, and I say it slowly now. If the official people say, they go like, they say Chi Umbi Vuetra. And then people ask me, so Father of Fanya, because they call me Father of Fanya, where are you going? And I said, Chi Umbi Vuetra. And they go like, where is that? I said, Chi Umbi Vuetra. And then some smart person said, oh, maybe he means Shimbifusha. And I was going like, no, that's not the way you write it. When you write it, it's Chi Umbi Fuhicha. And no, nobody speaks like that. It's Shimbifusha. And so weeks after I went to Shimbifusha, and I would tell the people, no, I wasn't talking, I was shouting, because people shout from the other side of the valley, where are you going? And I go like, Shimbifusha. And they were, ah. So we had to learn a lot of new stuff. And in the meantime, we also went there we had to do something with our children, of course, because schools are not, there are schools, but my daughter is 19 now. She is doing her exams. A lot of people of 19 in our area never made it through third or fourth class. So the level of the schools there is very low. So we had to homeschool. Well, you see Simeon there outside the house in the top. He loves it, because homeschooling also means that in the afternoon he didn't have to sit in class. He could go in the rainforest, climb trees, and try to catch some nasty animals. I don't know why. He's never been afraid of animals. He would just come home and go like, oh, Daddy, look. And you go like, yeah, put it there, you know. And at the same time, the children also came with me to the different villages. We always thought it very important for the children also to see that what Daddy is preaching is also the same thing he's doing. So I think you probably know the saying like walk the talk. Have you ever heard of that? I mean, we all know that a lot of Christians do say beautiful things on the Sunday morning, and then during week times it's like, well, they're not really living it out. So we always said, okay, if we have the opportunity to do homeschooling, let's do it in the correct way as well, and help them to understand why mission is important. Why do we tell people about Jesus? Is it really necessary? So you see us in the middle, on the top there, in the actual village called Shimbifusha. You now know what it means, right? And we're eating there with the king, the gentleman in the front. He's the king of the village. And I'm just gonna say it, and I'm not a racist, but because I'm white, I was able to go to all the kings and the important people in the area. Because we also had a friend, he's a pastor of a small charismatic church. He was not allowed to come in the house of the kings. So he basically orientated himself on the what they say the normal people. And as soon as I came into a village, the king came out and he said, "Oh, you can come in my house and you can eat with me." So my friend Doris is his name, and we just decided, this is just the way it is. Let me concentrate on the important people. So that means the witch doctors, the kings, the mayor, and the deputy of the villages. And he concentrated on and I will do it again, normal people. So we had a very good understanding together. Racism is actually not a big thing on Madagascar anyway. Because if I would walk somewhere, people wouldn't mind to say out loud, "Hey, you're like a ghost," because I'm so white. And I would laugh. And then I say, "Well, at least I'm visible during the night, you're not." And we had a lot of fun together. Yeah, don't do this in the Netherlands. Don't do it in Western Europe. I think I'm going to cut it out of the video because it's tricky. But it's true. I had a big light on my car, a very big beam, because it's scary to drive on Madagascar in the dark. And they actually asked me, "Vanya, the father of Vanya, why do you have this big light on your car? Are these 2 lights not enough?" I said, "Well," I said, "do you know how hard it is to see you guys in the dark?" And they started to laugh. And then I said, "Well, except when you're smiling, because that's easy." And I thought I was sharp. And then my friend, who's a Malagasy, he looked at these guys, and there was this guy who barely had any teeth. And those few teeth he had were black. And he said, "Well, except you don't see him." And we're just having a lot of fun. But if you explain them about racism, they go like, "What's that?" Because for them, it's just making fun of each other, and they don't mind when you make fun of them. It's a kind of a relaxing thing. Also, when you go to a funeral, you all have probably been to a European funeral. You need to eat a very sour lemon. You need to sit there like, "Oh, it's a very sad thing." It's true, it is sad. And don't you dare to make a joke, because people go like, "Oh, that's not appropriate." But if you go to a Malagasy funeral, you come into the house, you do a little kabari, a little speech, and then everybody goes like, yeah, that was a good speech. And then somebody decides, I don't know how long it takes, but they've got a protocol or something, I don't know. They decide, okay, it's time to crack a joke. So they make the most horrible jokes about the one who just died. And you go like, but everybody's laughing, and I go like, okay, I'm gonna laugh as well. So everybody's laughing, and then, I don't know, the protocol again, the ladies decide, okay, this is enough laughter, now we're gonna cry. And all of a sudden the ladies burst out in crying, and you go like, what? We just had a lot of fun. And they start to cry for 5 minutes, and then one of the men become angry, or they play. They go like, okay, shut up. And the ladies go like, oh yeah. And it's the whole ritual again. So it's a very strange thing for somebody from the Netherlands, because it's not what we are used to. But you guys are learning this here in Cornerstone, right? You know all the ins and the outs of mission field when you leave this school. So I already said we did a lot of homeschooling. So here you see my wife teaching all 5 of my children, which is quite a task, because it's like 5 different levels. But she's doing an awesome job. My wife is teaching most of the subjects, and I'm only doing English and theology and philosophy, which is a lot of fun to do as well. So my wife is mostly working harder than I do. So I just pretend I'm working really hard. And then, coming back to the language again, how are you going to teach the gospel to people who can't understand a word of what you're saying? Because if I'm starting to talk Dutch now, maybe most of you might understand a little bit of Dutch. I think the Canadian lady will understand when I talk about my oma. Yeah, there you go. Because in Canada, there are a lot of Dutch people, and when grandma comes to Canada, they keep on calling her oma. So that's cool. I love Canada. Anyway, but we decided here to do a common language, English, which might be a bit tricky because it's not my first language, but at least we can understand each other. So now I wanted to go to these villages and I wanted to preach the gospel because I'm mostly an evangelist. You were on the conference at Bidding House. Was there somebody else on the conferences who's sitting here? Opwekking. And who did the sketch? Did you do that? Because I don't recognize you in normal clothes. So they were sitting there with these 4 bells and funny clothes. And I came there and she said, okay, ring the bell. And I would go ring, ding, ding. And this lady with the blindfold, she said, I have no idea what the gospel means. How do I get saved? Right away I go like, oh, I can help you with that. Just remove your blindfold and I will explain the gospel to you. Well, so I ruined the whole sketch. I'm very sorry. And I think it was you. No, you have to ring the other bell. And I go, oh, okay. So it was a nice sketch, but I've ruined it. I'm sorry. So in our village, I decided to look up somebody who was able to speak the official language and the dialect. And that was the local teacher his name is Mensa. And I said, Mensa, how about you translating Bible stories into the dialect? He said that he was more than happy to do that. And the funny thing was about this whole idea was that nobody ever translated Bible stories or whatever in this dialect. And it's about 2 million people who speak this dialect. And we have on Madagascar 18 official language dialects. And most of these languages are being in the process of having a translation, at least the Gospel of Luke, except the Antanala dialect. So my friend, we didn't know it back then, but my friend and I started to translate the Bible stories in the Antanala dialect, which is pretty cool to do. And I didn't understand a word of it in the beginning. So he finished the first 3 stories, which is starting with the creation, and then Adam and Eve, and then the fall. And I decided, you know what? I've got 3 stories now. Probably I can go to all the different villages and preach the stories I've got. But I didn't know what the stories really said. I knew the context, because you see I have some pictures, okay, this is the creation. And I started to tell these stories to the people without me knowing exactly every word, but I was going like, they probably understand it. And they did. And they were really amazed. They were going, oh, wow. Finally, we hear it in our own language. And brave as I am, when I was finished in one village, I would tell the people, well, and if you have any questions about the gospel, I'm here to answer them all. And they looked at me and they were going, we believe you. Now, later on, I started to understand the language myself. You see here a little picture. I've made a booklet of the 41 stories we translated. By then, I wrote one story myself. It's about baptism. And with these 41 stories, I went from village to village. And it's not just going to one village and tell the story one time. It's basically going to the village, telling them 5 stories, coming back the week after, and then repeat story 3 to 5, and then another 3 stories. So you constantly repeat some of the stories, which takes forever. But the people love it. And we grew up actually here in the Netherlands, thinking that stories is for children. But forget about it. Stories are for adults as well. I love it. When somebody can tell me a good story, I'm listening. And don't you ever think that most of the adults don't like it, because we all say, oh no, it's for children, but they love a good story. And in the countryside of Madagascar, it's even more so. They love a good story. So I went from village to village. Even when I came to villages where no people were around, I would just walk on the roads, and they were working on this road here, and I said, guys, it's much too hot in the sun to work. Come, stand in the shade and I will tell you some Bible stories. And they were going, oh yeah, that's nice. And they started to, and you see the gentleman in the front with the hat. He was actually the overseer. Now the nice thing about him was that he said, oh, but I'm going to church. And I told him, oh, that's a good thing, because then you probably don't mind if I take all your workers and tell them the gospel and they can go back to work in 30 minutes again. And he actually had this plan. They had to work all day, but now he just told me that he was a churchgoer, so he couldn't refuse me. So I could tell them the gospel. And you see that they are actually listening to this strange white guy telling the Bible stories in their dialect. And they loved it. And I also went to villages. One of the villages was called Beyunu. And the king of that village was Yabani Velutia. Yabani, that's the father of, so he's the father of Velutia. And I went there time and again. And I don't know how many times I went to that village, but I think all 41 stories, he must have heard them at least 4 times each. So, and that sounds a bit like this.
Ni ulu maru be isai tirka deo am ni lalanga malalaka ni faltana isai mi tunja uam ni fa simbana afu sini helu tam ni talu isahu mandem ni lalanga malalaka kua na peti be ninu ni toko ni adi mafi ni changa na mati mafi ni sisipa maru.
Okay, you have probably no clue what's going on here. Well, I'm talking about Lalanga Malaleke, Lalanga Teri, which is the broad road and the narrow road. So if you are planning to be saved, you better go on the narrow road with Jesus, I told him. And then I made a big mistake, because in the Malagasy language, you've got a lot of past, present and future. So for example, there is, in the past is nisi, at the present misi, and in the future it's hisi. And I was talking about how I lived in the past when I wasn't a Christian. And I told them, oh, I was fighting a lot and I was drinking alcohol and I was doing all things God forbid. And now I've got a lot of girlfriends. And he looked at me and he said, because he heard, I said it in the present tense, I have a lot of girlfriends. And so he wouldn't go like, and then I realized that I said something in the present tense. I said, no, I mean in the past. And you see him going like, oh, okay. So he was relieved that the preacher was sticking to his own wife, which is also a thingy, because we've seen, sadly enough, a lot of preachers going in, how do you call it in English? Adultery. So it was not uncommon, but luckily he understood that the big white guy misspoke himself. The good thing about him is that he became a Christian in 2023, I think. His daughter got possessed with a demon, and it was your typical biblical demon possession. It was like the daughter was screaming and she was hitting everybody and she was going crazy. And now he decided to go to the witch doctor to see whether the witch doctor could get rid of the demon. But you probably understand that the witch doctors and the demons are bodies. They kind of like each other, so that didn't work. And after weeks, he decided to go to the local Christians, because one of the stories is teaching that if you have trouble with spirits or demons, you go to the Christians and ask them to pray for you. So the Christians came to him and they said, well, we can pray for you, but you need to get rid of all your lucky charms and all your stuff you use in worshipping the ancestors. So they did. They took it all out of his house and they burned it. And we're talking about a lot of money, but they burned it and they prayed for his daughter, but nothing happened. And that was strange. The demon kind of calmed down a bit, but a few days later, the daughter became totally crazy again and tried to fall in the fire and stuff like that. So he ran to these Christians again and they said, well, you probably have something left in your house. And he went like, yeah, I do. And he had some stuff still there in the corner he used to use to worship the ancestors. So they took that out of the house as well, burned it, and they went in the house and they just prayed a very short prayer for this daughter. It was like, get out in the name of Jesus. And it was like that, and she got healed. And that's amazing. And he looked at his wife and he said, oh, we better go to church now on Sunday morning because this is real. So they decided to go to church, which is awesome, of course. And I can say he's very dear to my heart. Yabani Flutia. He is, I think, halfway 70. He calls me his friend, which is unheard of because I'm now 49, but that's still way too young to be a friend of somebody who is almost 80. Because in that culture, if you're my age, you're still little. And to become a friend with somebody who is above 70, it's just not something they do. But he calls me my friend, his friend. So it's a very nice privilege to know each other. So by now we also translated the Gospel of Luke. You see the left, that's the cover of the Nifila Sansara and the Suratan Yuka, Amnifiteni Malagas Antanala district in Mananzari. That means something like this is the Gospel of Luke in the Antanala language of the district Mananzari. And we also translated the Book of Acts in the Antanala dialect. And that is now being distributed on Madagascar by several people who downloaded from our website. And sometimes they ask, do you need money for it? And I always tell them, it's not my word, it's God's word. And different people now are actually using these booklets to preach the gospel to the people who understand this dialect. So how cool is that? Oh yeah. Here you see, because it's not only translation work. The area is really, really poor. And one day, my wife actually found a little baby in the arms of the mother, and the baby was dying. The sad thing was that the mother had a big breast infection, so she didn't dare to feed the baby. And in our area, the ancestors have told the people, you cannot breastfeed somebody else's baby. So this lady didn't have any food for the baby because her breast didn't do anything. And she couldn't give the baby to her neighbor who was also breastfeeding a baby because there was what they call a taboo. They couldn't do it. And my wife found this lady, she's not on this picture, but she found this lady and she took her home and she started to help her with the breast. And she said, you need to feed your baby, else it will die. And a long story short, in the end, the baby survived. But you know how that goes. People go like, oh, that's awesome. Those people there, they understand how to heal people. So slowly but surely, more and more people came to us. People with malaria, people with severe infections. And neither my wife and I are trained medics. But even with the little knowledge we had from school here in the Netherlands, we knew how to help them. So here you see me sitting on the right in my working clothes. I don't look like this on Madagascar. I just take everything off. It's a bit warm there. Doing a test, because a lot of people had malaria, and it's not the kind that is okay, because you've got several types of malaria. In our area, it's the type of malaria that will definitely kill you. And we've had a little girl, Bubuli was her name. She came on our veranda. She was carried to our veranda, and this girl was almost dying. She was foaming. So a lot of saliva came out of her mouth. Her eyes were rolling back, and she was just dying of malaria. And we only had tablets, comprimés. So we didn't know what to do because this little girl needed an injection, but we didn't have that. So I started to grind these tablets very thin and mixed it. I mixed it with some water, but she didn't swallow or anything. She was unconscious. So my children, in the meantime, were looking at her like this, and my youngest, he looked at me, Daddy, I think she's going to die. And I was going, yeah, she's going to die, but not if we were hurrying. And he was going, oh, but she's foaming. And he was just like, you go like, oh my, you shouldn't see this at all. But they looked at it. Anyway, I told my children who were there, I said, well, instead of looking at her, you could start praying. And they were going, oh, yeah. And then I came with the medicine, and she didn't swallow anything. And I said to my children, pray that she will have a clear moment and she will be able to swallow. And we just pray, oh Lord, please make her swallow this medicine. And at that moment, she just opened her eyes and she looked at me very startled and a bit scared because look at me. Anyway, and I said, just swallow. And I poured it in her mouth, the whole stuff, I poured it just in her mouth, and she started to swallow. And as soon as she swallowed it all, she was away again. 3 days later, she was better. She played around. She was still tired, but she was playing around their house again. And I mean, that's something God is doing. And if you're a missionary, you need to be prepared to do horrible things like this. It's not just happiness and preaching the gospel, hallelujah, 1,000 people come to Christ, and next day you baptize 2,000 of the 1,000. Oh no, that's not possible, but it's hard work. And it's frustrating and tiring. Okay, so I will finish a little bit. In the meantime, we decided to go back to the capital city. We now live in the big city again. We still have our house in the village, so I still visit the village as often as I can, but that's only 540 kilometers, but it takes me at least 17 hours by road. So we decided to bring this young gentleman, Sambi Velu is his name, to the capital city, where we have a friend who is running a hospital, and he has been trained as a medic in that hospital. And after a year, we sent him back to the village, and he's actually doing our medical work in the village now. So that's really cool. Sambi Velu, and yeah, he's doing his best here. He's a bit more professional than I am because he's wearing his clothes and he's even got some latex gloves on. And people go like, yeah, but Sambi Velu, he's got a certificate. So he must be a really important guy, and that's the way they look at him. So that's really nice. And he's actually doing that work now. And in the meantime, what I said, I try to go to the village as often as possible because at the moment we're working on the book of Genesis to translate. And this is Mensa, this is my translator. And here we're actually discussing the totally different language, the totally different use of language in Genesis. Because Luke and the book of Acts, it's similar language because it's the same writer. But if you go to the Old Testament, all of a sudden you've got a totally different way of using language. So we're constantly discussing with each other, like, how are we going to translate this? How are we going to translate that? For example, if they use the word donkey, in our area, nobody knows what a donkey is. So my translator decides to translate it as horse. And now I go like, well, a horse and a donkey are two different species of animals. And he said, yeah, but they don't know what a donkey is. So then I said, okay, then I need to make it a little bit more clear. I need to write a little dictionary in which the people can look it up. What is a donkey? I need to find out how do I explain that in that language. So it's pretty challenging to do that. But Up till now, we have here 6 chapters in the book of Genesis ready already. So that's pretty cool, and it's very nice to do that book. This lady, a little girl, Nancy is her name. She was one of the severe malaria victims. She was not the same as Bobuli, but she also almost died as well. And look at her. She was happy because she was playing again. In the door, you see Yabani Patrice, the father of Patrice. He was the oldest gentleman of our village, and he was blind. And he just summoned one of his grandchildren. He would just say, "Come here and bring me to the father of Vanya because I want to talk to him." And that sounds like very, okay, he's going to have a conversation. No, that's just what he came to do. He just wanted to have a nice chat with me. And his grandchildren, they just needed to put down their work, and they just had to bring him to my house, and they would walk like this together with him, and he would sit with me for 30 minutes. And then he would just tap his stick on the floor again, and his grandchild would come and he would bring him to the house again. It's a very nice culture, actually. When I'm old, I like to do that as well. Just tell my grandchildren, "Come here." This is Yabani Menti, we say, and he is the deacon of one of the Lutheran churches in our area. And Yabani Menti is not able to speak, not able to read or write. He cannot read or write, but he's a deacon. And the funny thing is that he is teaching the new Christians the gospel. So how are you going to do that? Because you're not able to read, you're not able to write. Well, he's got a trick, because he decided to memorize the stories we have translated. And by memorizing these stories, he can teach the new Christians the whole, not the whole Bible, but the main parts of the Bible from Genesis all the way to Revelation. And for that, we put the Bible stories on a flashcard, and he's putting that in his phone, and he's listening whenever he's not occupied. He's listening to these stories to memorize them. And that sounds a bit like this.
Di napangantenga izy fa andefany fanay masina ho anar zareo. Folo andro tafarany nandehanan Jesosy tagny an-danitra, di niaraka nivory tamina toerana raika ny mpianatra.
And then when he knows the stories by heart, he's just on, I don't know, I think they do it on Monday. The new Christians gather together in the church building, and he's just telling them these stories. And he's saying, yeah, this is from the Bible. Not literally, but at least they know, like, okay, we've got creation, then Adam and Eve, and they sinned. And so why do they need a sacrifice? And then we'll go towards Abram and all the important stuff of the Bible. So it's really, really cool. So I've done it within 50 minutes. I've been told that I only have 50 minutes. And normally I just take forever. So if you want to see more about our work, you can take a picture if you like. We've got enough on the internet going on. Let me see, Odyssey, BitChute, YouTube, obviously video channels where you can also see some videos of us living in our village. Me going on a motorbike. In the beginning I still walked to all the villages, and later on I was able to buy a motorbike. I've got our temporary address here in the Netherlands because we're leaving in October. So if you want to send us a flashcard, a micro SD in English, I think it is. In Holland we say micro SD, on which we can put the stories. Please send them to that address because we can use them. And as I already told you, I'm from the Netherlands. I don't like to spend money. So if you send them in an envelope, please put a stamp on it. Okay? And I think this concludes the little presentation. So I think we're going to pray now, right? And then have some time to answer questions.